On the 17th of October 1999, the German Super Touringwagen Cup had its series finale at a short variation of the Nürburgring Grand Prix course. Two drivers were locked in a tight championship battle, in a season which was overshadowed by many controversial moments, steward decisions, and quite unbelievable driving standards. In a season when the manufacturers were embarrassed by a privateer outfit, who then proceeded to throw everything at them, including more weight penalties, unfair driving, and more. Join me through the journey of one of the most controversial motorsport seasons of all time. Enjoy! After the 1998 season of the Super Touringwagen Cup has ended, BMW, Audi, Nissan and Peugeot all withdrew from the series from 1999 onwards. This, plus the fact that they had to find a new TV partner, which they did with the DSF, in short for Deutsche Sportfernsehen, meant that the Super Touringwagen Cup was on its last legs. Nevertheless, Opel, Honda and Alfa Romeo are still committed for another season before the German motorsport scene would change again. If you want to hear more about that, check my last video. To save costs, Michelin became the sole tire supplier of the series, and in addition, success ballast was included, so that means if you win both races, so the sprint and the feature race, you'll get an additional 25 kilos on your car. The season calendar would consist of 10 rounds, with 2 races outside of Germany, with a traditional round at the Salzburg Ring, and, for the first time, a race held in Misano in Italy. As for the German rounds, only one airport race would remain in the calendar in the form of Zweibrücken, with Wunsdorf and Lahr being ultimately shut down for racing purposes. Otherwise, the calendar would feature races at the Sachsen Ring, the Norris Ring, the short layout of the Hockenheim Ring, and 2 races each at Oschersleben and the Nürburgring. But who is competing this season? From the beginning, Opel would send out 3 works cars driven by Uwe Alzen, Eric Ellery and Manuel Reuter. Honda is competing with 2 cars, using a brand new Accord as their base for the 1999 car, driven by Tom Christensen and Gabriele Tarquini, the same drivers from last season. The last works entry in the form of Alfa Romeo would still compete with the 156, driven by Stefano Modena in the first car and Andreas Schelt in the second car. These were all the works entries. As for the privateers, the most notable one was the Abt Sportsline team. Seeing as the ban of the Quattro technology was only relevant for works entries, the privateer outfit from Kempten modified their 1998 cars and gave them their four-wheel drive technology back. Christian Abt and Christian Nissan would compete for the team. Also competing with the Audi A4 Quattros was the newly formed Phoenix team, albeit they are using 1997 cars instead. Michel Bartels and Art Meyer would drive those Geber-sponsored cars. Other privateer entries consisted of Roland Asch, piloting an older spec Opel Vectra for the Irmscher team, Thomas Stengel driving an older Honda Accord for the KW team, Oliver Meyer returning for another season, driving the oldest car in the field with a 1996 spec Audi A4 Quattro, the national team Slovakia entering the series with another older Audi Quattro, with their driver Andrej Studenic, and the NH Sports team, who competed with another older Opel Vectra and with Václav Nimš as a driver. As the season progressed, more cars started to appear, including privateers like Franz Engsler in the Alfa Romeo 155, Georg Severich in a BMW 320i, another Audi A4 entered by Oliver Meyer driven by the Czech privateer Christian Zink, who was originally supposed to race another 155, and several more privateers, who tried their luck on single races. Things became more interesting during the Italian round, when the Italian Alfa Works team, Nordauto, entered 2 cars, driven by Fabrizio Giovanardi and Nicola Larini. Alongside them, a few more privateers from the Italian Super Turismo entered as well, but they aren't really worth a mention. And with that out of the way, let's get into the racing stuff. The season kicked off with the Sachsen Ring, and unlike any predictions before the season, and to the surprise of the entire Opel crew, it was the Abt Sportsline team with their modified 1998 spec Audis who were the ones to beat. Christian Abt won both the sprint and the feature race, with his teammate Chris Nissen finishing behind him second and Uwe Alsen in the best Opel car finishing in 3rd. The Hondas struggled to compete with the top guys and only managed a 6th and 7th place finish in the feature race. Things would improve for them at Zweibrücken, as Tarquini secured his first podium of the season with 3rd. The Opel Works team meanwhile would not have such a pleasant experience, even though their weekend started off strong with a pole position from Ellery. But when the racing began, the Abt Sportsline boys crashed their party, with Abt once again winning both races, whilst Alsen would fall down the order and finish the feature race in 5th, after he lost the battle for the sprint race victory against Christian. After that weekend, the manufacturers Opel and Honda desperately prayed and begged for an increase of the weight of the A4 Quattros, as they otherwise feared that they had no chance of beating them. And the organizers listened to them and increased the base weight of the Quattros by 30 kilos. And during the Oschersley weekend, the extra weight was clearly noticeable, and so it was up to Uwe Alsen and Tom Christensen to fight it out for the win. At the end, it was Alsen who took the full 90 points home. However, the Norris ring, there was more controversy. It was Manuel Reuter who took the charge at this tiny circuit and was about to win the sprint race in a dominant fashion. But just before the line, he slowed down and thus allowed Alsen to win the sprint. A clear team order, even though it was denied by the involved parties. And on the main race, Eric Ellery was used to fight against Christian Abt to steal more points from him. Things went ugly when Ellery spun Abt around on the first corner, which resulted in a stop-and-go penalty for Eric. And ultimately, it didn't change much, as Abt was still in 2nd, right behind Reuter, who this time took the checkered flag as a winner. For Honda, things went from bad to worse, as Christensen suffered from severe technical problems in the sprint and was ultimately taken up by Roland Ash in the feature race. As for Tarquini, he also had a miserable sprint, taking out Stefano Modena and earning a stop-and-go as a reward. Before the feature race, his gearbox died and he couldn't even start the main race. Now we are finally approaching the Italian round of the championship. The sprint race was won by Giovinazzi, ahead of Alsen and Nicola Larini. But the feature race would end up as one of the most chaotic races of the year. The two Alfa Nord Auto cars would instantly take each other out in the first sector of the race, and would earn a huge reprimand from the team boss. Christensen would have a great race, moving up from last of the grid all the way up to 4th behind his teammate Tarquini. But at the front, we had another battle between Alsen and Abt for the win. On the final lap, Christian overtook Uwe and won the race in a move which looked more like Uwe just simply letting him by. After the race, he claimed that he has received the wrong informations from his team, as they've apparently told him that Christian came in for new tyres, and he thought that he has already lapped him. His team went a step further and straight up said that someone must have had some access to the team radio communications. Question to you, do you really believe in that? Let me know in the comment sections below. All hell went loose on the first visit at the Nürburgring. A massive crash on lap 1 gave multiple privateer teams a chance to score big points, like Arndt Meyer, who scored his best result of the season for 5th place finish in the sprint, and even Andrei Studenich, who finished the sprint in 6th. For Alsen, it was a miserable weekend, as he was involved in a massive crash and has suffered a suspension failure in the feature race and therefore retired from both. The ones profiting from this entire melee were Christian Abt, who went further away in the championship hunt, and Tom Christensen, who finally won his first race of the season, and of Abt and his teammate Tarquini. Special shout out to Stefano Modena, who finished both races in 4th. Next up was the Salzburg Ring in Austria, a track which heavily favoured the front-wheel drive cars, and it showed. Uwe Alsen was unstoppable this weekend, and he won both races, even with the addition of a mandatory pit stop in the feature race to prevent any sort of tyre failure during the event. It was another good event for Christensen, as he managed to score another podium for him in the feature race. As for Abt, he has crashed out heavily during the feature race, allowing Alsen to catch up in the championship. And so it was Christian Nissan who wore the Audi flags with a fine 3rd place finish. After his car was wrecked at the Nürburgring, Roland Ash was given a more up-to-date Opel Vectra to further aid Alsen in his title bid. This will become more relevant in the future. Oschersleben was next, And once again, the front-wheel drive cars were more competitive than the all-wheel drive cars. The sprint race was another disappointment for Uwe, only finishing the race in 18th. It was Tal Queenie who finished ahead of Ellery in the sprint race. The feature race was once again chaotic. Christian Nissan suffered a major crash, rolling his A4 Quattro in spectacular fashion. At the same time, Audi made one of the best jump starts I've ever seen in my entire life. Seeing as several of the favourites also suffered from severe car issues, it was once again a time for the privateers to scrap for some decent points. Oh yeah, some bloke called Matthias Ekström also appeared in this round as an extra car to help Christian Abt in his title bid, and he ultimately finished in 4th, whilst Christian finished in 3rd. With 2 rounds left to go, Christian Abt had 517 points, whilst Uwe Audsen had 473. So as you could imagine, tension was running high. And the sprint race would fuel these tensions even higher. The sprint saw a heated battle between Audsen and Abt, where Abt came out in front, but before the end of the sprint race, things would end up in dramatic fashion. The leading pair was about to lap the privateer Opel of Olaf Pleuger. After he aggressively blocked Chris Nissen beforehand, he then proceeded to spin Christian Abt around, and Uwe Audsen then crashed into him in the process. Thankfully, both cars could be repaired for the feature race, where Audsen finished the race in 9th, whilst Abt originally finished in 3rd after receiving team order help, which led to Nissen letting Abt by. But after the race, Abt got disqualified because his repair time took too long. Christensen took the win ahead of Bartels and Nissen, who was promoted to the podium places. This means that going into the final weekend of Nürburgring, Abt had 520 points and Audsen had 498. The Nürburgring played host to the final race of the 1999 Super Touringwagen Cup season, and also the end of the series as a whole, before being replaced by the newly formed DTM in 2000. The sprint race was relatively calm, with Uwe Audsen winning the sprint ahead of Christian Abt, already gaining 6 points on the championship leader, so that means that Abt has 544 points and Audsen had 528. The feature race started calm with a strong start from Abt, using his all-wheel drive advantage to take the lead, before being re-overtaken by Audsen before the NGK chicane. Audsen was therefore punted off by Abt, so that Uwe had to miss the chicane. Eric Ellery meanwhile tried his best to take out Abt on the final corner, which was unsuccessful, as Ellery had to retire whilst Abt continued on. Now Manuel Reuter tried his luck on playing with Christian, but even then he collided slightly with the Audi and received a punch as a result. That means 2 of the 3 works cars were already out. Roland Asch, who has received a more up-to-date car at the Salzburg received a stop-and-go penalty for jumping the start, which he completely ignored. He tried to argue afterwards that he has never seen a message about the penalty, and he has no radio due to costs. Nevertheless, he was therefore disqualified for ignoring the race direction, but he didn't care. Tom Christensen had a strong race as he has overtaken Uwe Audsen and Christian Abt, therefore taking the lead and the race win, overall finishing the season in 3rd place. But the main talking point is, of course, the final lap. Here's some context. Chris Nissen has done a pit stop, which means that he was about to be lapped. Right behind Nissen was Uwe Audsen, who was followed by Christian Abt. This would mean that Abt would be the champion by 8 points. But right behind Christian was the already disqualified Roland Asch. I will let this video play because I can't even properly explain the final 500 meters of the championship.
Fährt dort, wo es 48 Punkte gibt. Abt fährt dort, wo es 40 Punkte gibt. Das heißt, es geht um ein 8-Punkte-Polster, das Christian Abt nach dem jetzigen Stand der Dinge noch hat. So.
Und das gibt es nicht.
Ich hab's gewusst. Ich habe es gewusst, als er vorne herfuhr. Da wird noch was passieren.
Was war da? Was war da? Wozu gibt es einen Grund, sowas zu tun?
Keine Ahnung. Keine Ahnung. War ja auch völlig unnötig, weil das Ding war gegessen und gelaufen. So.
Wer hat den Abt rausgeschippt? Es gibt's doch nicht. Der Asch hat jetzt in der letzten Runde noch den Abt weggetan. Ja, es ist so. Schau an, da fehlt einer.
Da ist er.
Ja?
Das ist Abt. Nee, also tut mir leid, jetzt habt ihr das nicht mehr alle.
Nee, also ich will die Bilder sehen. Wenn es wirklich so war, dann muss ich sagen, da ticken ein paar nicht ganz sauber.
And that was it. Elton was the champion. But of course, there were multiple protests going on from the Abt sports line and from the Opel camp. Both parties were not happy with each other after the race, especially after the ridiculous actions from Roland Ash on the final corner. During the meeting discussing the protest about the final lap, Abt Sportsline showed an amateur video showing this exact moment, where Roland Ash clearly took out Abt on purpose. After they saw this video, the DMSB declared that the final lap of the race would not count, and this would ultimately mean that Christian Abt is the rightful 1999 Super Touring 1 Cup champion. So that was it. A highly controversial season summarized in around 2,700 words. Honestly, I'm very happy to see that Abt was given his rightfully earned title back, as even though I do sympathize with Opel, they have truly embarrassed themselves that year by being beaten by a small privateer outfit from Kempton, who used the loopholes of the regulations to their advantage, and were the best team on the grid. Even the dirty tactics from Norris Ring onwards wouldn't change that. Oh yeah, and about Roland Ash, I think everyone who was watching the 1994 DTM season should not be surprised by his actions. But as a sort of happy end, let's call it that way, Roland Ash replaced Christian Abt for one round at the DTM 2000, filling in for him when Christian was racing at Le Mans. So should we be mad at anyone here? Honestly, no. It was a really entertaining season in its own right. And the best thing about it, the whole season is available on YouTube. So if you want to rewatch the whole season, go ahead and do it. I can only highly recommend it. The 1999 Super Touring 1 Cup season, a dramatic season which still gets remembered by several motorsport fans even to this very day for its final 500 meters.